Worlds of Fun is the largest theme park in Kansas City. This park's coaster lineup has been stagnant for over a decade, and it's routinely called one of the worst Cedar Fair parks. But is it still worth visiting? Find out in this park review. Worlds of Fun opened back in 1973. In its first decade of operation, Worlds of Fun had one of the premier coaster lineups in the country. You had the rare Schwarzkopf Speed Racer and Zambezi Zinger, the first roller coaster in the world to feature a Batwing in Orient Express, and the first stand-up roller coaster in the country in Extreme Roller. Oceans of Fun opened in 1982 as the largest water park in the world. Both the dry park and water parks continued to receive investment over the next decade. The biggest change occurred in 1995 when Cedar Fair purchased this park for $40 million, and they've owned the park ever since. Cedar Fair added the park's three biggest roller coasters in their first 1.5 decades of owning the park, but they haven't added one since Prowler in 2009. The park has still gotten modest investments over the past decade, but to say this park is long overdue for a roller coaster is an understatement. Worlds of Fun definitely has the land for it. The park has nearly 300 acres of land available, and not all of it is developed, particularly the area behind Patriot. The Kansas City metro area has seen steady growth over the past decade, but Worlds of Fun has been on the lower end of the Cedar Fair investment spectrum. There are rumors though the park will finally get a new roller coaster in 2023, and the park really could use it. They currently have 7 different roller coasters, and that lineup is pretty well rounded. It has a few decent to good coasters, but no true standouts in my opinion. The largest coaster here is Mamba. This Morgan hypercoaster dominates the skyline, and it makes quite the impression as you approach the park. The first half is good. The first drop and Giant Camelback offer great floater airtime. Then the far helix has decent force to it. But the mid-course brake run saps the train of most of its speed, neutering the return run, which I mentioned in my review. Those final bunny hills should deliver good airtime, but you're not going fast enough to come out of your seat. The newest and best roller coaster here is Prowler. This Great Coasters International wood coaster has a secluded setting, which is why it has a reputation as one of the best night rides out there. Very little of this coaster can be seen from within the park. This coaster is mostly an out and back layout with some decent airtime. I found the airtime weaker than most other GCIs, but the ride holds its speed well. And in my most recent visit, the ride wasn't too bumpy. The older wood coaster here is Timberwolf. This Din creation once placed in the top 10 of both the Mitch Hawker and Amusement Today Golden Ticket Awards, but it hasn't placed that high over the past 2.5 decades. This ride gained a reputation as a super rough roller coaster over the years, but the park has done track work in recent years to make the experience more bearable. While the ride is slowed by trims, there are still a few solid pops of airtime peppered throughout the layout. Patriot is the park's best looping coaster. This may be the weakest B&M invert out there, but as I mentioned in my review, it is still a fun and smooth attraction. The inversions just don't have the same punch and power as the older inverts. The ride does have a great zero-G roll with a ton of float, some forceful valleys and turns, plus a few airtime hills. The other looping coaster is a standard Vekoma Boomerang. It has a forceful series of inversions going both forwards and backwards. This one isn't too shaky, but this one seems to have a lot of downtime, so if you see it running and you want the credit, hop in line as soon as possible. Spinning Dragons is the park's best family coaster. This is one of the earliest Gerstlauer spinning coasters. The layout has some decent helixes and zippy drops, and that spinning makes it appealing to all ages. Lastly, you have Cosmic Coaster, a very slow wacky worm. A lot of Cedar Fair parks ban adults from riding the kiddie coasters unless they're accompanying a child, but I've had no trouble riding Cosmic Coaster by myself. This coaster is part of an expansive Planet Snoopy area, which is the best spot in the park for kids. There are nearly 24 rides here for kids, so younger guests could spend hours here at one of the biggest kids areas in the country. The entire area is bright and colorful, but it doesn't have too much shade, so pack your sunscreen. Worlds of Fun doesn't have a traditional dark ride, but their best flat ride is enclosed, and that would be Cyclone Sam's. This indoor chance wipeout is super disorienting with the compact building and the lighting effects, and the ride is pretty forceful too with the small pops of airtime and crushing laterals towards the end. Just note that you must have a partner to ride. The rest of the flats are an interesting mix. Most rides do not have the best cycles, but you have a lot of rare spinning rides here. Then there are two modern ones worth hitting. For the best aerial view of the park, you have Steelhawk, a Mondial Windseeker. However, this is a notoriously unreliable ride, so it can be tricky to experience. Detonator was the first S&S space yacht installed in the United States, and it's one of the more powerful ones. This one gives a violent burst of airtime after the initial launch, and then you ascend the tower a second time for a faint pop. Most of the water rides are towards the front of the park. None stand out in my opinion, but they are refreshing on a hot day. Viking Voyager is a classic log flume with a scenic setting and an okay final plunge. Fury of the Nile is a relatively short Intamin Rapids ride. There aren't too many rapids, but it is isolated and well landscaped. Monsoon is a drenching shoot the chute ride, and it is the water ride that routinely is the shortest wait on a hot summer day. You also have the option to visit Oceans of Fun. Until 2013, these two parks were separately gated, but for the past decade, you can visit both parks in the same ticket. I have never personally visited Oceans of Fun, but it is a sizable water park that appears to have a good mix of body slides and tube slides for all. Both the dry side and water park have their own separate entrances and parking lots, so I recommend parking it wherever you plan to start your day. If you intend to go to Oceans of Fun, I recommend starting there because that side seems to get the longer waits. If you start with Worlds of Fun, you want to be one of the first riders on Spinning Dragons. That family coaster does not have the best capacity, and it almost always has the longest line in the park. Knocking out Viking Voyager and Fury of the Nile early as well are smart if it's a hot day. I've only visited the park in summer, including holiday weekends, and I haven't had to wait more than 5 to 10 minutes for anything else. It is possible to ride all the major rides on the dry side in half a day. I have heard Haunt can get lengthy lines though, which is standard for a lot of theme parks. If lines are an issue, you can purchase a fast lane. You can purchase one just for the dry park, just for the water park, or a combination of the two. It costs roughly $50 per day, which doesn't cost as much as other Cedar Fair parks, so that sort of reflects the crowd level this park often sees. Operations on the dry side are solid. The 4 main coasters run multiple trains and have decent dispatches, which keeps the line moving. Now let's talk about the park's general appearance. The park is lightly themed to Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. Outside of Planet Snoopy, the remaining 5 areas are themed to a different country or continent. There isn't a tremendous amount of theming, but most rides have a creative name to tie into their land. Most of the rides do look fresh, and there are some heavily shaded sections of the park, including the African section where you also find these really cool animal topiary figures. I can't personally speak to the seasonal events, but Halloween Haunt would be the best time of year for night rides, and Cedar Fair's haunts are usually a cut above the ones at Six Flags. Just know lines could be long. The park also used to offer Winterfest, but it hasn't been offered in the past few years. The park offered a reduced lineup for the event, but it was a nice option for locals, especially if they want some bonus laps on Prowler at night. Lastly, I cannot speak to this park's food either. The offerings seem to be on par with the other Cedar Fair parks though from observation. So do I recommend Worlds of Fun? I think it's towards the bottom of the Cedar Fair rankings, but it is worth a visit if you've never been there. None of the coasters are great or elite, but you have a few good ones plus some interesting flats. And it is nice being able to visit a park of this scale where you typically do not encounter long lines. I do prefer the other 2 major parks in Missouri, but coaster enthusiasts can form a triangle and hit this park along with Six Flags St. Louis and Silver Dollar City in the same road trip. So those are my thoughts on Worlds of Fun. What are your thoughts on the Cedar Fair park? Do you agree it's one of the weaker parks in the chain? Let me know what you think about this park or any of the rides down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.